Dan Johnson here at AirVenture Oshkosh, and we're looking at something here that we've seen on a few other LSA. It's the law enforcement or other public use application of camera technology being carried by light sport aircraft. Now, this has been done in some other ways before, but classically most people associate this technology being applied to a helicopter.
Well, this technology is commercial off the shelf. It means we can just go into most stores and buy the camera, GPS, computer. But what it makes it different, they're simple components, but when you put it together, it becomes more sophisticated and actually allows us to start to simulate a low altitude helicopter flight all the way up to what a satellite would see. We're taking imagery from 20 feet above the ground level to over 18,000 feet, and we're able to capture imagery automatically from the light aircraft, the Sentinel, and that imagery gets recorded to a computer. In a 4-hour period, we can collect 4,000 pictures. Those images can be 3-inch resolution or less, covering hundreds of square miles. Those images get processed on the computer, again with software to create geometric image maps. So basically, as we fly, we're painting pictures across the landscape that get put together into these geometric maps. And then we're working with change detection that's being automated down to 3-inch resolution.
And change detection means what? That you saw it one way, now you see it another way, but the computer somehow interprets this?
Exactly. For example, on the border, the U.S.-Mexico border, we've tested this going over repeat points, GPS reference points, that actually GPS is triggering the camera over those same points. You're flying a racetrack pattern, so you're looking at a point of reference every, say, 10 minutes. In that 10 minutes, the images are collected and then software automatically registers those two images together. Anything that's the same cancels out, it's just black. But if there's a drug smuggler hiding in the shrubs, just even the tip of his head, a little shadow from his head, and then he moves to another location, that becomes a red flag that we know precisely where that person was. And
then somebody on the ground is going to go investigate
we
that
go
change.
and direct the Border Patrol goes to that point and interdicts. And this is a total departure from the Predator and other technology. Because all technology is point and shoot video. And when you go out and
actual motion video,
you're zooming in, and when you zoom in on a spot, you get information for that one area. But on the border, for example, there could be 12 other groups smuggling drugs across the border.
Because it's too narrow.
You're too narrow. All that other information
so you're
is
getting
lost.
this huge picture.
We're looking at tens of square miles over several minutes, mapping dozens of incidents simultaneously. And that's what will be then transmitted to the ground by data relay to an incident commander. He sees where the vehicles are, he sees where the people are, he can then deploy his forces. The mosquito part is the intelligence part and the concept of swarming. Many of these aircraft.
Okay, that's the use of the term mosquito.
That's
lots and lots of eyes.
Lots of them. Small, persistent, and annoying.
Well, they certainly are that. The little ones, I mean, the land of my hand.
Think about the national statistics for search and find. It's not one expensive aircraft that finds people. It's how many eyes in the skies you have at a given moment that increases the probability of seeing things going on.
So do we have a value proposition for the Sentinel mosquito package?
Right. Base price for the whole aircraft system with the imaging system, computer control, software is $150,000.
Wow.
Again, you could buy 100 of these aircraft, probably 1 flight hour or 2 flight hours of a Predator.
Wow. That's a pretty dramatic opportunity then. And as we talked earlier, all these municipalities, these police agencies, wherever they're at, the federal government, their efforts with the Border Patrol personnel and so forth, they got lots of money, it seems like, in my frame of reference, but the reality is their budgets are getting squeezed pretty tightly.
That's right.
And they're starting to cast their eyes around and looking at light sport when 10 years ago when the money was flowing, they didn't care.
There wasn't incentives. In fact, your budget was based on how much you needed for the next year.
Yeah, right.
And where
so you wanted to upspend.
That's right.
Yeah.
And where we are now is the biggest issue is the sustainability. How long can we fly 9 Predators for 5 years for $245 million and only catch 4,000 people?
Yeah, right. You see how that doesn't compute pretty easily.
What are these 3 pieces that we have in front of us here?
We have your basic camera system, with a customized mount produced by Sentinel Aircraft, World Aircraft, allows us to actually put multiple sensors on a quick interchangeable panel.
Yeah, this whole thing here just pops in and out of the airplane, right?
That's right. Then it's all connected to the computer. Everything's controlled by computer, but this sits behind the seat, out of the way, and everything is controlled by a touch screen.
And this is what's inside the aircraft.
This is
part right here
up front. Now this can be operated by one person, just the pilot, hitting menu-driven options, and it runs everything.
So you don't necessarily have, what do they call, a tactical flight officer or something like that?
Or operator.
Who sits up there, another costly guy who just runs the live video version.
That's right, exactly.
Whereas this is one guy doing the flying.
One guy is doing this, one automated image acquisition while the pilot flies his points of reference.
So you got two double values here then. You got a much lower cost aircraft, dramatically less. But you also got less personnel cost and less personnel exposure then in case something goes wrong.
It takes one person to fly a Sentinel Mosquito and operate it. It takes 11 people to operate a Predator.
So let's go have a look and see what we're doing with all these items.
I think we better do that. In this airplane, it's quite a different application here. How is this one going in, Richard?
Well, we can take one or more sensors. They can be the true color digital, it can be multispectral, thermal, and...
okay, so you can put other equipment here and do other kinds of activities.
That's right, and by putting larger cameras, we can get up higher. We can say from 9,000 feet, looking down at 3-inch resolution. The camera, say, 4 times this size. So we have the interchangeable camera, it comes up, quick release, goes on.
Put a different type of camera in there.
So swap out different sensors for different missions.
Okay, and then where does this go actually?
Just sits up, it goes up in the fuselage, out of the airstream, so it's weatherized, out of the elements.
And now that's fitting right up into the airplane. It's not hanging out like that.
That's right. It goes up in the aircraft when it's mounted. It takes only 5 minutes to mount it.
Wow.
There's just one or two cables that go from the camera or sensor up into the cockpit to the computer, and then everything's run from a touch panel controller.
Okay, so now we've mounted, or at least hypothetically, we've mounted the equipment that we just saw. 5 minutes, and you screw some points in, and the camera is firmly mounted inside the fuselage. Then you take in the other component parts here, and how are you going to install them in the aircraft?
We're just putting this back in the baggage compartment.
Okay.
Behind the seat.
Oh, behind the seat. So that just kind of sits there and works without having to have visual reference to that.
That's right. Everything is visually referenced. This is your heads-up display, your touchscreen control panel. So all computer data acquisition is controlled from this panel. What we do is we have it mounted in different locations for different setups, and then everything's controlled by touchscreen by the pilot. We also have the actual flight lines already set up, so we know exactly the height and the spacing to get the image overlap, the right coverage. We're collecting this in stereo imagery so we can look at things in 3D. And as we're flying, we're able to see the aircraft flying along those lines. At each point, there's a waypoint representing a GPS trigger point. So the camera is being automatically triggered by the GPS. The GPS is triggering the camera. You see a picture displayed, so you can adjust all the camera settings from this control interface. Exposure time, and so forth. That way you can fine-tune your camera to get the best illumination or best exposure for any given illumination. We can do this high from 20 feet above ground to 18,000 feet. We can work this under full cloud cover.
So I'm thinking to your term here, secret sauce, I'm beginning to get a picture here that there's a little more than just some gooey stuff that you put on food here. This is a pretty intensive software development.
It really is, because there's probably a dozen different softwares that are integrated in this whole system. And think of it like a band. You can have all the different instruments sitting around the chair, but unless you have somebody that can come in and knows how to play it, orchestrate it, there's no music.
They're just making a racket.
That's right.
Yeah, okay, so pretty interesting stuff. You had given me some experience that you'd had in the past with NASA and ultralights and some other stuff. Do that review for me quickly.
Okay, ultralights were first introduced back in 1985 to NASA. They were planning on using helicopters for their mission to planet Earth. They ran out of money.
This is when NASA was doing their environmental studies and things of that nature.
They look at the Earth as planet Earth, as spaceship Earth, and its life support systems. And so they first balked at the idea of using ultralights and didn't consider it a real airplane. So I underflew a U-2 with an imaging spectrometer and had multispectral sensors set up on a MXL2 with the seat out. Those sensors measured parameters for the environment that were used to drive computer process models. And it turns out the NASA U2 sensor didn't work. My sensor did work, and we had 25 scientists waiting on the ground for results. So I then got 3 ultralights, then the first light sport back in '94 under light sport utility. And so I worked with funding from NASA for 7 years, started my own business, NEOS, in 1995, and my first contract was with Senator Command, mapping the Panama military zones for transfer back to the Panamanian government in 1999. In that case, Army Corps of Engineers was contracted to try to fly out of Mobile, Alabama. They would get down there 3 or 4 hours, and the cloud cover was always there, and so they couldn't get any data. I put a light aircraft in a container, shipped it down to Howard Air Force Base, and I flew then out of Howard Air Force Base with the F-16s.
I love that you got started with this in ultralights.
Yeah.
Now you're in the light sport aircraft. This is all my comfortable home territory.
That's right.
You've given us so much information here today, Richard, and we appreciate that very much. It's almost information overload. So when people want to say, okay, I got to go take this again, where do you want to send them on the web? We're watching this on YouTube. We're already at our computer. Where do we go on the web to find out some more?
We have a Sentinel website, World Aircraft Company website. They can look up the information about the Sentinel, and then my NEOS Limited.com, NEOSLTD.com has the backdrop of all the information from back in 1989.
Okay, so World Aircraft Company to get some information about the airplane, the Sentinel here that we're looking at,
right,
and your website to get some more information about this application here for those
milestones, including winning the U.S. Air Force Commander's Challenge for persistent surveillance, looking for the bad guys.
Persistent surveillance. You've had a lot of cool phrases here, and I'm only going to remember a few of them. But thanks a lot for talking to us today, Richard. We appreciate this. We'll have some more about this website and other information, and certainly about the aircraft itself, available on my website, bydanjohnson.com or bydanjohnson.com. Thanks so much for listening today.